think everyone already knows each other. So the agenda today was to do a quick overview of Excel Power Maps. And I was curious if anybody's used those before or seen them.
No.
Not really? Okay, sounds good. Well, it's a, you know, we talked about slicers last month. It's another tool within Excel that's pretty neat, and it's on Excel 2013 and 2016. And for 16, it is right in the Insert tab. So I'll go ahead and jump into a demo of that tool, and I'm going to share my screen. So if you have any questions throughout, please feel free to stop me. So you should be able to see an Excel spreadsheet. These are data that we got from CDOT, and I kind of took out a lot of the variables just so I could make the example a little bit easier. But these are from 2013 and 2014. They're statewide data around driver impairment. And so the variable that we chose for this is officers suspecting drivers of these different infractions. So you'll see 4 different types: alcohol and drugs, just prescription drugs or drugs, and then no impairment at all. So that's kind of what we're working with. I have city, county, and state in here, and I'll show you why that is important in a second. So under the Insert tab, under Tours, you see a button for 3D Maps. And so if you click on this, you can open 3D Maps. And unlike the slicers where you created a pivot table or had to be clicked into the table, for maps, if you're clicked anywhere on the sheet, it brings up the data that's on that sheet. So I created this before. I'm going to go ahead and create a new tour so that we can look at, as I build it, how it goes. They call them tours because you're able to create multiple scenes within one tour. So if you think about it like a PowerPoint presentation where you can create multiple slides, this is a similar type of function, except you actually create different scenes for data within your maps. Over on the right-hand side, you'll see a navigation pane, kind of similar to the slicers function, the pivot table function. And on this, you can see that you have the opportunity to add data into a variety of different fields. The map on here is powered by Bing, and so it uses whatever location data you add here to populate this part of your map. So you'll notice if I actually click off of Colorado, that it'll find any city that I have in my data around the world, and it'll actually ask.
Peter, sorry to interrupt. Can everybody see the map? Because I can't. I see your mouse moving, but I don't see Colorado.
Okay, I actually, sorry, I know why. I think, thanks, Will. It brought up a new. Okay, now can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, great. So sorry about that. It actually, it brings up a new page. So it sends you to a new place. I was sharing the Excel sheet still. So let me jump back real quick. So this map is powered by Bing. And over on the right-hand side, you'll see, similar to a pivot table navigation pane, areas where you can add your data. So for location, for the height of whatever you're putting in there, categorical data, and then a time. And so I was saying that if you don't have a specification like by zip code or with a state boundary, that it'll find whatever city names that you have in your data and populate that. And so you can see that some of our city names are all around the country as well. So I added a field for state, and then that limits my data to Colorado. So now I'm actually going to add under the category field, I'm going to add my impairment categories that I had. And you can rename your layer as well in case you want it to appear as something different. So I could name this impairment. So under my legend, it shows up as that. You can tilt your map so you can get different angles on your data. You can zoom in and out. And you can also hover over each of your different data points to get an overall sense of counts for your different categories. And then another neat feature is the time field. And so I have date within my data set. And so what it will do is actually create the ability to make a video. So over the time range that you have in your data set, it will show the different growth of the data. So if I hit play here, it'll show from the beginning of 2013 through to the end of my data in 2014, the total counts across the state. And so that's what I mean when I say a scene, is that you could create another scene below this with a different type of data. So it might be, you know, data related to ER visits that you would play after this. On your tour navigation pane, you can actually adjust how long the scene plays out. So if you wanted to do 30 seconds, you can name your scenes as well. And then you can adjust when it starts or stops. So if you only wanted to do 2013 within your data, you could do that. And then it has the overall speed here. Just like pivot tables, you can click out of those panes so you can get a better view overall of your map. And then there are some neat features up here as well. So if you want to take off the date and time stamp, do that under time. You can take off your play button on your timeline. Up here, if you wanted to capture a screenshot of any one scene, part of your scene in here, you can do that and then paste it into Word or into PowerPoint. So that's a useful feature. You can change your themes. I play with this a little bit. Some of them are really pretty ugly, but you can change the different colors themes to get it, you know, to your organization's colors or you know, something that appeals to you more. If you have added other data, there's the refresh data button, just like in a pivot table. You can add shapes to it as well. I haven't really messed around too much with that, but you can make the map flat if you want instead of curved. Add map labels, so just like you would in Bing or in Google Maps, you can actually see the different cities. And then over here is how you get back to your layer pane and tour editor. And so I'm just going to actually show you a little bit of some editing possibilities. So you can adjust the overall height of your data and how thick your bars would be and how opaque they are. And then you can actually, by your different categories, you can change the color of each of those. So say if you wanted to do a overall blue scheme, you could go through here and change each of these so you have a little bit more uniform color. And then down here, underneath layer options, is a button called data card. And the data card is what appears whenever you hover over your data. And so you can actually customize that card. So this is what will show up. Instead of driving impairment 1, maybe I want to just make that a little bit cleaner and call it driving impairment. Same with this one. So now, when I hover over it, it'll show what I had written in there. So you can clean that up and make it whatever you want, change those labels. You can, if you only had data for your county, you could do it by city, so that instead of seeing it just in, let's see, I have it by city already, actually. I would think that at a statewide level, the county would be a little bit easier to look at, but that if you were doing it in your county specifically, you might do it by city so you can see differences around your county. Under the data button, you can also change the type of chart. Research shows that pie charts aren't the most easy for humans to interpret, so probably sticking with a bar chart for this would be good. It does have a heat map as well, but these are funny because I haven't figured this out. When you zoom in, it doesn't get any larger. So I guess maybe that's how you do it. Change your radius of influence down here. Actually, it doesn't really make it that much bigger, but so this is a pretty easy and quick way that if you have location data and want to create a 3D map that you could, you know, like slicers, if you wanted to do some live use of this, but you were doing a presentation, you could, you know, include a link in your PowerPoint, just like you would for the slicers function. So any questions about power maps or anything I just went through?
No, so it looks like a pretty cool tool, though.
Hey, Peter.
Yeah.
Do you think that you could put other stuff on there aside from city names, like the names of schools or something like that?
Yeah, you can, and I haven't played with this, but you can. Let's see, under new scene for the scene group, you can add a custom map, and it allows you to upload a picture. So if you had a picture of your county, I think you could do it that way, or you could just get the zip codes of your schools or the actual street addresses of your schools to put those on there.
I think the other option is to just, if you have a street address for your schools, you can, yeah, I think that would work. You could do latitude and longitude too, but I think if you had a street name, that'd be easier. Sorry, I was thinking out loud.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah, so Will, I'm trying to think of if you were, yeah, I'd have to play with it. Because right now, I imagine you could have school as a header with just the address, and then whatever data is associated with that would show up at that location. So, yeah. No, we definitely do that.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
But under the custom maps, I guess I was seeing people who would do maybe like a national park or something and wanted to show certain specific things within that might not come up through a location finder. That, you know, it wouldn't show up on zip code specifically within the park. So yeah, any other questions? Any thoughts on how you might use this or inspirations you're having?
I think the probably the learning curve on this is a little bit steeper than slice or dicer. I mean, it looks great. I love the fact that you can create a 2D. That is really powerful. And I like the fact that you could do it over time. I mean, one of the things that you could do is you could look at arrest data by time of day, and then you could see where things are where and at what time things are happening. I think it would take me a while to be able to use this. I mean, it's easier than ArcGIS for sure.
Right.
Sorry, my thoughts are really unformed, but I wonder if maybe we need more than an hour to glean your expertise, Peter.
Yeah, well, I think for me, this was really just if you didn't want to learn about ArcGIS, that it would be a way to look at data in a little bit more simpler way. So I guess, yeah, I don't know. My expertise doesn't go much beyond kind of what I'm about, basically setting up a map to look over time with a couple of different variables. So.
And I think it's one of those tools that, you know, I think we're hoping to present it as just another option you might have, and, you know, kind of to spark the idea of different ways you might use it. And so I think it's certainly an opportunity where if you all seem to have some data that might be a good fit for this, you know, it might be a good opportunity to share back at a future roundtable kind of how you use that and how it was useful. You know, I think immediately when I look at it, you know, it's not nearly as precise as some of the data we look at. So I think just keeping your audience and purpose in mind, you know, I think especially if you're trying to, you know, just look at a kind of broad level about what's happening within your county, your city, whatever, and you have data that fits a map like this, you know, I think it's a good chance to engage your stakeholders and engage your coalition to kind of think about the data, but it probably isn't going to provide, maybe it may not provide the level of specificity as some other ways to kind of analyze and display that data, but I think it's certainly a powerful way to engage certain stakeholders.
Yeah. Yeah, I was trying to think about, you know, county-specific interventions that you might be doing as far, yeah, like you mentioned, Will, by school, be one way to look at it. By jurisdiction, as far as cities go, would be another way to look at it. Yeah, I'm not sure, Teresa, like you said, the learning curve, the balance between whether it's worth it to, you know, pursue creating maps like this with the value that it brings to whatever audience that you're looking at it with. So it may be that internally it can be a tool that you use to visualize your data in a different way. Because I found it, if you're familiar with pivot tables, it's pretty intuitive for how you add different variables to the different fields. And so for me, it was a nice way for a data set I've maybe been looking at through SPSS or some other analysis, just to visualize it. So I think of it that way too.
Peter, have you played with custom regions at all?
I haven't played with this.
Okay. I'm still stuck on the first question about adding the schools and then maybe creating your own boundaries, or being able to import boundaries from someplace else. But I can play with it and get back to the team. I'd like to just kind of mess around with it and see what I can find, and then maybe come back with a few more tips and tricks kind of thing.
Yeah, as far as I've found for like boundaries was adding the state, kept it to Colorado, and then if you had addresses that were specific to a county, it would only populate that county. So as far as I know, that's how I would create a boundary at this point.
Do you think that you could make, like if you had a county level, could you make a specific county like a different color? Because we've done a little bit of mapping stuff where we put high schools and liquor stores and dispensaries on a map, but what I really want is to like highlight Aurora or Arapahoe County, so that it just kind of pops a little bit more. Like for us, I feel like the use is engaging stakeholders, because it just, I don't know, feels more real when you're actually looking at the county and you look at how many liquor stores there are and how many dispensaries and how close they are to schools. But it's, Arapahoe County and Aurora don't have like really clear boundaries, so it's a little bit hard for stakeholders to kind of
Yeah, so you'd want to create a boundary for the Aurora part of Arapahoe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so I actually, what I haven't played with is this custom regions, but maybe that's the way that you can put in your boundary in a different way and overlay it on the map. So we can look into that more.
Yeah, that would be super cool.
Yeah, because I was thinking too, like the OBH regions, if you wanted to have that as a set that you could put in and it was shaded, in different colors across the state. Any array of different kinds of boundaries.
Yeah, it'd also be cool if you could like overlay if you could overlay certain demographics within your county, and then also look at, if you looked at population, and then you also looked at, some of these arrest data or something like that, just to see where there are some kind of areas where there's some disparities that might be worth looking into or tracking over time. Yeah, I think it's just a way of thinking about your data in a different way.
Yeah, and I show you real quick. Let's see, I'm going to share a different one that So this, I just added another layer to the driver impairment and then changed it to a dot. And so it was the average age of the driver across these different impairments over the 2 years. So that was another way to add an additional piece of data.
So what does the circle represent?
So the circle represents the average age of the driver across all the impairments for that county. All right. So yeah, we'll look into how to make boundaries across, if you can do that. And then yeah, if anybody plays with it in any other ways, let us know. Yeah.
I mean, it would be, so I think that one thing that we're hoping to do maybe next year is, I don't know if this is going to be possible, but to get like school level HKCS data. So that might be pretty interesting to look at, something like 30-day use at different high schools and map them out. So, you would see like a different size bar at each of the schools on your map.
Yeah, and you don't have to use time. I mean, you could use results from 2013, 15, and 17 if you wanted. You had
Right.
school level, but you could just do 17, right?
Yeah, we just don't have school level for past stuff because there wasn't really a ton of participation in Aurora. So this year, I think it's going to be a lot different.
Yeah, you could do the 1 year with just a static point just to create a map.
Right.
Yeah, and I almost wonder too, that might be neat visually, Will, to see perceived use versus actual use, or maybe do some of the social norming comparisons.
Yeah.
because I think, yeah, seeing that visually on a map could be more impactful than just showing it in a bar graph or in a line. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just messing around a little bit over here, and I know I put in zip codes for Arapahoe County. There's an option where it'll automatically, it knows the boundaries for the county. So I think there's definitely some ways we could use this a little bit more. If you had your boundaries that you wanted to look at for Aurora, for example, and then you had addresses for those schools, I think it could look at those together.
Yeah, I feel like Excel stuff is always like, if you can dream it, it probably can do it.
Right.
Thanks for dreaming, Will. Well, does this spark any other ideas from folks? So HKCS could be one possibility, just over one time period or one time point.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, is that Lynn?
Yeah. I wasn't sure whether I'm hitting the right button, but so it seems like at the local level we won't be able to use it make it more useful unless we have more location spots. I think it's very useful at the state level because it see the county and all the data differences.
Right. Yeah, I could see like, yeah, as your boundary maybe gets smaller and you have less data, it would be less useful. Maybe still at the county level, if you had different points across your county, that could still be interesting. But yeah, I hear you.
It's just that if you enter zip code, it automatically goes to the county anyway. So it's not an area within the county.
No, I was just saying you could use zip codes as a way to show the boundaries of your county. But, the way I was just doing it on here, and I haven't messed around with it really at all, is just I put in the zip codes for Arapahoe County, and it knew the boundaries for those. So it basically set it up such that you could have different values pertaining to a specific zip code, and it would shade those counties appropriately.
Okay.
So again, I think this is something that we're certainly not experts at yet, and I think it sounds like there's some interest around it, both on our team and within the folks on the call. So hopefully it's something we can continue to learn and think about how we could use, and then maybe share back in a future call.
Another question related to the location under the layer pane. Are these fixed names you have to put down city, county, and state or country for the map to understand and recognize? Because, for example, if you put school without address, then it won't know. Or even with address, would it recognize?
That's exactly right. So if you don't have a zip code or an address and you only have the city name, it'd pull up that city name anywhere in the world that Bing recognizes that as a name. So the only reason I added state along with county and city was so that it bounded it to Colorado. So ideally, yeah, if you had data, you would have longitude and latitude. If you had that zip code, a street address, it kind of depends on what you have. If you only have the city, then you'll want to put either your county name and state as well, so it bounds it to that. You would see, yeah, like for Pueblo, where else in the country there were, the town of Pueblo. Does that make sense, Lynn?
Yes, but yeah, it is fascinating. I find it interesting, but if we can use it, it will be even better. So yeah. I'm sure we can use it in some way, maybe.
Well, I think so. What would be useful for us would be like questions like Will's, so on how to create a boundary that we can then go and learn about how to do that. And so I think, Will, like you said, if you can dream it, it's probably possible, but if you guys help us think of the questions that you have that you want to do, ask us and we have the time to pursue those and to then share that information back with you.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. All right. So the rest of the time on the call was just, taking turns going around and talking about what you've been up to related to evaluation. And then any questions you had for the group or things you wanted to discuss. So any volunteers to share first?
I'll go.
Okay.
So I guess two things. One, as far as what we are kind of doing right now as it relates to evaluation on our grant, is we're about to put together what we're calling action teams for each of our different strategies. So what I'm looking forward to is to work with each of those teams to put together an evaluation plan that would be specific to each of those strategies. So looking forward to that. That'll probably come in the next, I don't know, maybe February, start doing that. January, I think, would be a little too soon because we'll take a break in December. So looking forward to that. And then the other thing I ran into, Jeff and Christine. I ran into them at the AEA conference, and Teresa. So that was kind of fun. Hi, Brooke. So just as always find some really fun tools there to use. So kind of interested in maybe trying those out with the organization, and then if they work well, maybe apply them to some of our group work at the coalition level.
Yeah, that'd be good. And if you try anything and you found it successful or otherwise, it'd be great to share.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. So specifically, I really am excited about using a rubric as a tool to measure things that don't seem measurable. So just for fun, one thing that in our organization we often return to, it seems like, but we never really figure it out, is how to make our staff meetings as effective as possible and efficient with time. So, we always try to discuss it and figure it out, but we really never know if we are getting closer. We just know that it's not perfect. So I thought that'd be a fun thing to do just with staff to see how it works in, with me leading that exercise and then maybe applying it to those action teams as they start to get formed.
That'd be interesting to hear how that goes.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share.
Do you think it'd be relevant to whole coalition meetings as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've thought even applying it to our board of directors, because those always seem to popular thing to complain about, but difficult to figure out really, and to know if you're heading in the right direction without a tool. Yeah, absolutely.
Any questions for Dawn or thoughts on? Great. All right. Thanks, Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody else want to share what you've been up to?
I can share for us. So kind of similar to what Dawn was talking about, our coalition's starting to enter into the task force phase. So we're kind of splitting up based on strategies. And I think the plan is at some point, Teresa and I to go in there and help them develop and think about the evaluation plan as they move through that. But we're having a little trouble organizing and getting everyone on the same page for meeting separately with the task force and just scheduling wise, and as the holidays around the holidays are coming up, so that's going to make it a little tougher for that. But we contracted with the Colorado Health Institute to do readiness assessments in the schools that we're going to pilot whatever trainings that get decided on by one of the training task force group, to just kind of gauge how the readiness for those trainings and those schools and what they needed. And it was nice to get the data back that we got back, because it confirmed some of our risk factors that were chosen by the coalition and by the data, and also just like one of our problem statements about perception of harm of marijuana, and that the staff are really interested in getting trainings on things like that, and that they really want in-person trainings is another one that came out. And I think another thing that was really helpful was they helped identify who the trusted adults are in the schools with the students, and how it varies by different schools. So we have I haven't gotten the report yet, but they presented on that at our last meeting. And so we're just kind of moving along from there with that information.
So, yeah, do you foresee any challenges in working with those groups on evaluation plans for the different strategies, or approach that?
There might be, just based on the varying levels of engagement and understanding from different people, and just some pushback we've gotten in the past from certain people regarding like data sources, and that we've cleared up and then have to go back and clear up again with certain ones. I mean, I think we haven't really thought about it entirely yet, because we haven't exactly gotten to that, because they're still trying to get organized in a organized fashion. I think the farthest probably that we've gotten is our evaluation plan, and starting to think about how we'll measure different things. But
Dawn, I'm curious, have you thought about, when you're working with your individual action groups, how you'll help them to build evaluation plans, or what activities you'll use with them?
Not really. I'm just moving away. Piper's getting loud. No, yeah, it'll be small groups, so it'll probably be simpler, than like Erin, some of the stuff that you've talked to. I think maybe if it's a smaller group, maybe it's a little easier to, now I'm shutting her out the door. Now she's locked out. Yeah, so no, I haven't given it a ton of thought, but I envision it to be kind of a fun little small work group exercise. And I wish I had better memory of the, you guys all walked us through, I'm trying to think, was logic model. Remember that meeting, that collaboration meeting we had? It was a logic model exercise. Did we do evaluation plan in that too? I just am remembering.
The one where we came up to you, or the one the meeting in Aurora?
Maybe it was in Aurora. It just seemed.
Yeah, we had the one meeting with your coalition, but we just were kind of doing the logic model at that point.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, just trying to, I think it'll be important to really simplify it and not bother the individuals who aren't evaluators with the detail-y stuff, and just kind of get them to wrap their head around it and feel, have them contribute to the process so that they understand kind of the importance of it and where we're going with it. So.
Well, maybe that's a good segue for Will. I know the last meeting I came to, you actually led a session with your group on logic models.
Yeah, so I think we're in a pretty similar place to everybody else, it sounds like. We've kind of identified strategies, and we're working on implementation, I guess, but it's one of those things where I think that as people start to implement stuff, what they want to do kind of becomes more clear. So during the last coalition meeting, I guess I've put together kind of a draft of an evaluation plan for us. So I've got metrics and all of that stuff from kind of my perspective. But we wanted to get input from coalition members as well. So we ran through a logic modeling exercise for most of the coalition meeting. And it was pretty closely based on what you guys had done, what the Evaluation Center had done in the past with their cookie cutter logic model stuff. I adapted it to be about making blueberry pancakes for my daughter's birthday. But aside from that, it was pretty similar. So I basically just ran through an example and we did it as a group. And then everybody broke into their kind of action groups to focus on their specific strategies. And then, so they worked in small groups for the rest of the time, just trying to outline all the outputs and outcomes and impacts and those sorts of things, trying to think through the strategies a little bit more. So that took a while, and it was definitely not enough time at all. We're going to pick things back up at the next coalition meeting, but it's one of those things where I think people probably could have spent 2 or 3 or 4 hours. Maybe 4 hours would have been a little bit much, but a long time kind of thinking through all of that stuff.
Yeah, Will, what did you think went well, looking back on it?
Well, I think that the process worked pretty well. My goals were really to make sure that everybody was on the same page with knowing what a logic model is and kind of how they work, and then to run through the process with our actual strategies. So I think that people were really engaged, and they understood the process. So I think that it was great to get input from everybody. One thing that we're just sort of struggling with in general, though, is that people kind of come and go. So, there's definitely people that always come, but having to educate people about the interventions every time we have a coalition meeting, and getting input from people that aren't as experienced with what we're hoping to do, is a little bit of a struggle, so I'm not sure what the result is actually going to be when we're done with this. Like, I think that we will have logic models that are put together by the coalition, but I don't know how high the quality will be, because some people just, this is their first time coming to a coalition meeting or, something like that. So I think that it's going to be, it's great to have the input, but I think putting an actual logic model together is going to be a mix of kind of staff time and coalition member time.
Yeah. Yep. That makes sense to me. Yeah. Yeah, I think too, like when you were talking about making outcomes smart, that additional time to have that conversation maybe is even a whole separate conversation for an internal team or for the data group. Yeah, I think you're spot on. It takes a long time and often not just one sitting to get through to a kind of a polished logic model.
Right.
I think that's important to recognize that it's not.
Yeah, if we had better engagement, like outside the coalition meetings, I think that maybe it would be more feasible. Like if people were able to break out into their work groups and put a few hours in on their own, I think that the process might work better. But we just sort of struggle with asking for time from people outside of the meetings. There's a lot to do, But more generally, we're kind of at the point where we have a drafted evaluation plan, and there's still stuff to fill in, but I'm starting to send it around to coalition members to get feedback from them. And then I was going to send it to you guys once we have kind of a little bit more polished draft to get a sense of what you guys think. At this point, it feels like we've got a number of interventions, and so the evaluation plan feels pretty large, considering the size of the budget and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. I got one other kind of thought on logic modeling sessions. I think something for participants that can be hard is getting in the weeds. The difference between like a work plan and a logic model, that when folks were starting to talk about activities, it was people who were probably going to be doing them. And so they kind of started to go down a road of wanting to be really specific, which I think can be good, but sometimes it's our job as evaluators to kind of, bring a group of different activities together and say, well, what does this one thing really represent? That's our one activity, to keep the model a little bit less convoluted with a list of different activities that'll happen. So that was something that in my experience has happened, and then at the group I was sitting with could kind of be playing out. So something to keep in mind is how do we help to keep folks kind of moving towards a more general but useful model that we can then create work plans or strategy maps from.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing. How about Lynn for Pueblo?
I agree with you. We have the evaluation plan, even though as much as we like to have everything in place before we even move on and evaluate, but I believe it's a developing process also that you probably will refine it along the way. What I want to talk about is that this year, October, we had the annual Learning Summit meeting. We have, I think this is the third year, we have usually gathered groups, institutions together and review data. Peter was there. We share what we have updated and review what we have been doing with those winnable battles that people prioritize over the years. And I want to mention something. We did a quick readiness test again, just to assess where people are. And we did find out that people are aware of many of the issues, and in most areas people are ready. But for example, for one of the intervention that we are going to do to tackle on the truancy, a lot of people didn't realize that it was related also to the substance use too. So I think that's a good way that we bring people together and visit and find out what people know and don't know. Another thing is that people didn't realize that our binge drinking, even though it's still an issue, but we have been decreasing in Pueblo. And another terrible reputation that we have is the teenage pregnancy. Also, I'm just talking about another data point, that we actually have significant decrease. And so information like that we share in the community, and we have about 68 members participated in that. So it was a good gathering and good data sharing. And at the end, we prioritize again the existing battles that we are tackling, and we actually find out that a lot of that people are thinking that we were able to reflect on the strategic plan that we're putting out together. We still have, we still need to bring in all the different, how do I say it, these different groups, community advocates. We still have to expand the social media. We still have to bring people together, the schools. And another thing that we did notice, that schools are not as enthusiastic as the rest of the community members in changing. So that's another area that we have to work on. And overall, I think we are we are still moving forward, and people are doing great jobs in the area that they're doing, and it's good that we always get together annually, at least annually. In fact, we have more frequent meetings, but to share all the information, what people have done for the year. So that's my report.
Great. Thanks. Any questions for Lynn about their Learning Summit? Any other last questions or things folks wanted to discuss? No? All right, well, we're about 5 minutes from 11, so I guess we'll end today a little bit early. As we mentioned before, if you're thinking about the mapping that we talked about and you have questions, definitely shoot them our way so we can look into them further and try and find an answer. And even think through some ways that you might want to use the maps. So, great. Thanks for being on the call. Appreciate it very much. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you all in Loveland.
Yeah, next week, right? Or no, the week after.
Week after, yeah.
I don't know. It's on my calendar. I'll be there.
All right. Well, everybody enjoy the holiday.
Yeah,
All right.
see you guys.
You too.
All right.